Kakalosh Boker Tov. We're continuing with Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph. This is the 73A1 on the two dots. There's two dots, 3 lines down, where it says, if you were shechato shelo leochlav, if you slaughtered the Korban Pesach not for the people that are eating it. So we said, and you did this on the Shabbat, you're going to be chayav. So says the Gemara, pshita, obviously, kevan dehatam pasul. If you already told me that when you slaughter, not for the people that are eating it, it's going to be pasul, right? So therefore, here, if you did it, if you did it on Shabbat, you're going to be chayav, which means it's just an obviously math, you're just doing math over here. If right now, when you did the Korban Pesach and it's a kosher Korban Pesach, so you should be patur from Shabbat, or it should be mutar lechatchila even. But if you're going to tell me that it's not even a good Korban Pesach, which means that it's disqualified, so obviously you're going to be chayav because you were mechalel Shabbat. You didn't do any Korban Pesach. So says the Gemara, you're right. Mishum the Tana Seifa patur, Tana Reisha chayav. Which means since the Seifa already told you that if you did it leochlav v'shelo leochlav, which means you did it for the people that are eating it and not for the people that are eating it, and you said that it's going to be patur if you did it on Shabbat, right? Because at the end of the day, it was still a kosher Korban Pesach. Tana Reisha chayav. That's why we also taught chayav, even though there's no chidush. That means there was no chidush in the Reisha, right? There was no chidush, but we also just mentioned it. Why? Because derech agav. By the way, meaning sometimes the Mishnayot does that sometimes the Mishnah will bring something down that it's not a novelty, but the fact that you needed it because of something else. So therefore, derech agav, we also mentioned it, even though there was no chidush in it. Okay, that's what he's saying. So says the Gemara, v'anami pshita. Also in the Seifa, it's a pshita, it's obvious. Why? Mishum dehatam kasher, hacha patur. Which means, if you did it leochlav v'shelo leochlav, means for people that are going to eat it and people that are not going to eat it. Is it kosher or not kosher? It's kosher. Because if you remember, as long as it was also for people that are going to eat it, it's kosher. So therefore, obviously, you're going to tell me that it's going to be patur. So therefore, why do you even need to mention it? Saying it's obvious. The general rule is, if the Korban Pesach was kosher, you didn't be mechalel Shabbat if you did it on Shabbat. If the Korban Pesach is disqualified, it's not kosher, you are mechalel Shabbat. So why do I need to mention it even in the Seifa? And then you tell me, no, it's derech agav, the Reisha, we brought it because of the Seifa. But why do you need to do that? Ela aidi de tana shechato shelo lishmo b'Shabbat, tananami shelo leochlav. You're right. Since the Mishnah said that if you slaughtered it not for the Korban Pesach on Shabbat, you're going to be chayav. So therefore, also we taught shelo leochlav that also you're going to be chayav, even though you didn't really need to do that because it was obvious. Because remember, when you do it shelo lishmo, it means that it's not for the Korban Pesach. It's for what's shelo lishmo? Not for the Korban Pesach, not for it, but rather for something else. What is it for? A shlamim, right? A peace offering, right? Remember, usually whenever it's not a Korban Pesach, it's a peace offering. Okay. So he says, because it cannot be obviously a chatat or nasham or all the other ones, it has to be a peace offering, a shlamim. Okay, so says the Gemara, vehi gufa lamali. So why do we actually have shelo lishma brought down in our Mishnah? So says the Gemara, mishum dekbaili flugor Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua. We wanted to teach us a machloka between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua that if you're going to slaughter other korbanot for a Pesach, right? So therefore we brought down the first case, which was a Pesach for another korban. Then we brought down other korbanot as a Pesach. Remember, there's 2 different cases. You slaughtered a Korban Pesach for another Korban, and then you slaughtered other Korbanot as a Korban Pesach. So since we wanted to bring down the machloket of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, that if you slaughtered another Korban as a Pesach, are you chayav or patur? Because, says Rabbi Yoshua, you're going to be patur, right? Because you're still doing a mitzvah, and Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav. Remember, but you're tarud b'mitzvah, and Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav. So therefore, we brought down both cases. So Amale Rav Huna bar Chinana livrei, says Rav Huna bar Chinana to his son, Ki azalt lekamed Rabbi Zrika, when we will go in front of Rabbi Zrika, by mine, we're going to ask the following question. Ledivrei omer mekalkel bechabura patur, chato shelo leochlav chayav. Are you going to tell me that if somebody's going to be mekalkel bechabura, that he's going to be patur? Which means like this. What is the reason why a person will be chayav and mechalel Shabbat if they do a brit milah, or if they slaughter an animal? So the reason why is because you're making a chabura. Making a chabura means you're inflicting a wound, and by inflicting a wound, that's an avera. You're not allowed to inflict a wound on Shabbat. If somebody comes and inflicts a wound on Shabbat, yeah, you're not allowed to. Somebody once told me that's the reason why you're not allowed to beat your wife on Shabbat. Yeah, why? You're not allowed to inflict a wound. Yeah, but other than that, you understand? That's what, fine. So he says,
not when you're Moroccan.
Huh?
Not when you're Moroccan.
Somebody once told me if you're Moroccan, then she beats you. That's her name, Michael. Yeah, if she's Moroccan, she beats you. Yeah, that's who it is. Right? So basically what happens is that the question is that it says over here, what about according to the Shita, the Mekalkel b'chabura is patur? Which means there's one Shita in the Gemara that if you're going to be making a chabura, you're going to be patur. You're not going to be chayav. Why? Because when you make a chabura that's mekalkel, you're making it worse. In Shabbat, whenever you want to be obligated on something, you have to do something positive, not something negative. Meaning there cannot be a negative type of an action. So, for example, right, melacha she'nitzecha legufa. You did a melacha, but you don't need the melacha. It's patur. It's patur. It's asur d'Rabbanan, but it's patur v'asur. You're right. There's one shita of Yehuda that says chayav, but we paskin that it's going to be patur. Why? You didn't benefit from the melacha. You understand, right? You didn't benefit from the actual melacha. So to here, there's a shita that says that when you're going to make a chabura, you're going to be patur. Why are you going to be patur? With your mekalkel b'chabura, which means you made something negative. When you come and you beat something, when you cut open a child to do a brit milah, or you come and you do a wound, whether it's in an animal, but you did a shechita, so that should be patur. So says the Gemara, matiken, what did you fix in the shechita? At the end of the day, the Pesach is going to be pasul, and you're not allowed to eat it. So there was nothing that was positive that came out of it, right? Remember, one more time, what did you just do? You came and you slaughtered a korban pesach and it was disqualified. Why was it disqualified? Whether it's because shelo leochlav, shelo lishmo, it wasn't done as a korban pesach, it was done for another sacrifice, or it wasn't done for the people that are supposed to eat it, or whatever reason that it was disqualified. So says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, you're going to be chayav. Why are you going to be chayav? Mekalkel b'chabura is patur, which means that if you have nothing positive that came out of this chabura, it should be patur. You should be exempt from any chatat offering, a sin offering. So answers the Gemara, tiken, no, you fixed it, sheimalu lo yirdu, which means that even though the Pesach is disqualified, for diavad, if they brought up the emunim of this Pesach on the Mizbeach, they don't bring it down. They actually bring it up. They leave it there.
It should be opposite. No? If it's not coming nothing positive from there, it should not be exempt.
If it's not going to be positive,
it should be not exempt.
No, the opposite. Because mekalkel b'chabura means that if you don't have anything positive, so therefore you shouldn't really be held liable for your actions. Meaning Shabbat melechem machshevet aseret Torah. Melechem machshevet aseret Torah means that Hakadosh Baruch Hu only prohibited something that you want. That's why there's something called davar she'eino mitkaven is mutar. What's davar she'eino mitkaven? Something that you don't have kavanah to do, and you did it. It's going to be exempt. So, for example, you're walking on the street and all of a sudden, without realizing, your shoe pulled out some grass. You're exempt. Why are you exempt? You didn't have kavanah to take all the grass. You're not benefiting from it. If it's psik resha, which means that it's inevitable, it means that you wanted to do it. Because that means, so if you're going to open up the fridge door and the light turns on automatically, you wanted the light to turn on. You didn't want it. Yeah, but it's inevitable. You open up the fridge door. You want it. Let's say you don't care about the light. You're walking in the street and all of a sudden a neighbor's light goes on. You didn't care about it. So you're not liable.
But the second time you pass and you know about it.
Well, if you know about it, because then you know. You understand? But technically, even if you do know, technically there's halakha that there's no problem. For example, let's say you live in a building, right? You live in a building that the light goes on, right? So, and you have to get to your house. So again, obviously it's not the lechatechila. It means don't buy a house in such a building, or don't set up these lights, or don't do all these things. But, right, you're allowed to go into your building, and then it's a davar she'eino mitkaven. Psik resha, yeah, but it's a psik resha. Right, but it's a psik resha de lo nichale. You don't want it, or lo ichpale. You don't care about it. So I'm not allowed to use a light. So I would have to add an extra light. You understand? Or I would have. So I remember that we never had this problem. We had this problem in Gibraltar, right? In one of the houses that we had. So what we did is that we used to go up either with our eyes closed, or technically you don't have to actually even close your eyes. You could go up with your eyes open, but you're not allowed to go up quickly, because that means you're benefiting from the light. It means that you have to be going up, right, without actually seeing, without benefiting from the light. And then it's considered that it's not benefiting. Or what we did was we installed an extra light. Yeah, exactly. So you add in an extra light, which means that you could add in a light, and all of a sudden now you're benefiting from your light, not from the extra. That's additional light.
It happened to me in Paris. Now I was feeling so bad each time I was passing in Shabbat there.
Right. No, it's a problem. It's a big problem. It's a problem. But another way of doing it is that you get a goy to go in front of you, right? But then it's again the goy is allowed to do that, right? Because then it's psik resha, and then the goy is allowed in psik resha. You're not allowed to benefit from the light.
You cannot tell
right?
the reg also to do it.
Right, you're
because
not
he
allowed
needs
to.
do it if he
No.
wants
He's
it.
allowed. He's allowed to do a psik resha. He's allowed to do it, but you're just not allowed to benefit from the light. Which means that you're allowed to tell the goy, "Can you go in?" Now, if the goy goes and the door is open, those like automatic doors. So now you're allowed to go in. Now you're allowed to tell the goy, but the goy in psik resha is allowed to. Right? That means even if it's inevitable, you're allowed to do that. But what you're not allowed to do is you're not allowed to benefit from the light. So you could either go up with the lights, your eyes closed, or eyes open, but you're not allowed to go quickly, which means that as if that you're doing it as if that you're not benefiting from the light, right? Or you could add an additional light, right? Or what I did is that it was very, very smart. Yeah. What I did is that I moved up the sensor a little bit. And when you open up the door, it didn't turn on automatically. And then I used to go against the wall. And a lot of times, because I went against the wall, the sensor didn't turn on. Well, exactly. Like I was like breaking into my own house. Yeah, I was going around, right? So I used to walk against the wall. So the majority of the times, if right now it wasn't inevitable anymore, it's not a psik resha anymore. So therefore, even if the light does turn on, no problem. So I used to do that, and then I used to go. So basically, some people I know what they used to do was they used to cover the sensor on Shabbat. So for example, if it's on your own floor, it's much easier, especially if it's right by your house. You understand? Every Friday afternoon, boom, you put a little tiny piece of paper on the sensor. Right, Motzei Shabbat, you take it off.
The kids are thinking about Russia. You have to go like 6th floor and they put the sensor in the staircase. Every floor used to do it.
Was turning on.
The rabbi allowed them because it's inevitable.
Yeah, it's inevitable. Listen, what are you supposed to do? I'm saying you have to get home. So that's the way it is.
Not benefiting. Every time you like to say it's switching.
No, for sure. No, I'm going to tell you something. For sure, it makes an impact. For sure, and that's why it's not the lechatchila scenario. You understand? But what are you supposed to do? Somebody once told me they were going to a Pesach program, and the hotel that they had, right? You know how many hotels you could count on your hand? How many hotels still have keys? Nowadays, go to a hotel and count how many have keys. Right? It's old-fashioned. I mean, you're talking about like 99% of hotels don't have keys anymore. You understand? I remember in Spain, there was one fancy hotel that they installed keys because since there were Jews always coming, and the Jews were always asking them to have the keys, so they installed it. So they had both. They had a key plus they had the card, which means that they did it purposely because they wanted that to accommodate the Jews there. So they did it. But other than that, I'm saying you're going to go. The majority of people, they don't. So what? You have to. So okay. So you have to carry it in your pocket, and then you got to go to always open up for you, and so on and so forth, right? But you understand. But you have to. But again, all these things it does. You understand? Meaning, if you can try not to, but it's sometimes it's just impossible. You're going to be going around 100 hotels until you find the one with a key, probably. You understand? So okay, let's go. So says the Gemara. Amale Rav Una. Balchinan libre כי עזר כבד המזיק הבא מן לדברי המאמין לקרקע בחבור הפטור שחטאו שלא לאוכליו חיה מה תיקן? So he said תיקן, he fixed it שימלאו לא ירדו, which means if you brought up the emunim, the limbs, to the mizbeach, you don't bring it down anymore. That means even though this Pesach was pasul, but diavad, if they brought up the limbs to the mizbeach, you don't take it down, right? You actually bring the limbs. Okay, so therefore that was the tikkun that you did. You did fix it in a certain sense. So shechatov nimtza balmum chayav. What happens if you did shechita and then you found it to be a balmum? So he said chayav. Why are you chayav? So we said in the Mishnah, the reason why you're going to be chayav is because you should have levakero, you should have checked it, which means that before bringing a sacrifice, a few days before, you have to check it. You have to check the korban. That's the reason why, if you remember, by the way, that we said that Ashkenazim do minimum of 4 days of selichot before Rosh Hashanah. Because just like a sacrifice, you have to check it minimum 4 days before in order to make sure that there's no mums, there's no blemishes. So too the Ashkenazim, they check themselves, meaning they do selichot minimum 4 days before Rosh Hashanah to make sure that before they go into the new year, they're without any blemishes. That's the reason behind it. So the same thing, it's called bikur. Bikur is to check into, to look into, to investigate, like a bikoret. Okay? So what happens now if a person did shechita and they found that the animal was a balmum, you're going to be chayav. Matiken. Right? What did you fix? So says the Gemara, Tiken bedukin shebayin. We're talking about in the cataract of the eye. Remember that's what we mentioned yesterday as well. Meaning that the blemish was so small, it was like the cataract of the eye. So ve'aliba de Rabbi Kiva, according to Rabbi Kiva, he says, Ta'amar, that a mum bedukin shebayin, a mum, this type of a blemish, which is in the cataract of the eye, imalu lo yirdu. If it goes up, it doesn't go down. So again, if it went up to the mizbeach, you don't take it down from the mizbeach. Okay? So says the Gemara. So next one. Shechatov nimtza trefa b'seter patur. We said that if a person did shechita and they found out that it was a trefa. Trefa means that it can't live the year. Now, many times a trefa, it could be like a needle inside the stomach. You can't check it. What are you going to do? You can't even know about it until after you do the shechita. You open up the split open animal, then you start looking into the animal to check what's going on. So says the Gemara, Habba Galui, right?
It's part of looking.
Yeah, no, but it's something which is hidden. If it's hidden, you can't see it, so then you're going to be exempt.
But when you open, you don't
Yeah,
see
but
it.
you can't. Well, you can't open it before doing slaughtering. You only open it after you do shechita. So that when you did the shechita, you thought it was a kosher animal. Yeah, that's why you're patur. So says the Gemara, which one?
You start to take out the part.
Yeah, no, but that's after those. After shechita. First you do shechita. When you finish the shechita, you skin the animal. After skinning the animal and it takes off the skin, then they open it up. The way that they do the way that they do the shechita is that they come. The animal comes into whether it's like a type of a machine and it picks up the neck, or on the floor and it puts it in between a ring or whatever it is, and it holds it down. And then basically what they do shechita. When they finish the shechita, yeah, what happens is that the animal is caught onto, like they hang it. It picks up the animal, right? And when it picks up the animal, it's a big machine usually. Picks up the animal. They put the like two different chains on different parts of the animal, and the skinning of the animal, because they cut it and they skin it, and all of a sudden it pulls it, and the chain skins the animal, meaning the chain starts pulling down, so all the animal starts peeling off, meaning all the skin starts peeling off. Okay, and it goes up. Okay, so then what happens afterwards is it continues, and then there's a saw, and what the saw does is it goes straight right through into, it cuts the animal into half. Sorry, before the saw, when it comes in and it already skins the animal, then what happens is that they cut it open. I don't remember how, and then that's when they look for it. For the next step is the saw that just goes straight in half, right? But usually when they already cut it open, they take out the lungs and they check the lungs. Usually they put the lungs in water, right? They put like a pressure of water, and the lungs expand, and they see if there's any holes. Because if there's any holes, it's going to come out the water. So they come, they open it, and then they check, and look, the lungs are complete, right? And they also check inside the animal to see if there's any cuts or things like that. So that's what they do in the shechita. Okay.
And the color of the liquid of the skin, and not the skin, the organ.
No, that's something else. That's when they're looking. But that's already, again, these are just the little things that they're doing at the beginning. Okay, fine. So it says over here. So now, what happens though if it was in a galui? In the galui means that they went and they found it in the revealed areas. They found that it was a trefa. So he's going to be chayav. Matiken, what did you fix? So tiken leotzi midei nevela. It fixed that now it's not going to be considered a nevela anymore, which means that even though it's a trefa and you're not allowed to eat it, but since it was done shechita properly, it does not have tumat nevela. Remember, nevela means any animal that died without shechita. That's a nevela. Nevela is an animal that died without shechita. Trefa means that the animal was done with it a shechita, but the animal was not supposed to live out the year. So that's why it's called a shechita trefa. A trefa does not have tuma, right? An animal that does not have shechita has tuma, meaning a nevela has tuma. A trefa does not have a tuma. So therefore, that's what he says. You did fix it. What did you fix it? There's no tuma with it.
So trefa doesn't have tuma, but it's not kosher.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So Matkifla Ravina comes and he asks the following question: How did Tanya, that which we learned in the Braita, Shochet Chatat B'Shabbat B'chutz La'avodah Zarah Chayav Alea Shalosh Chataot. Imagine right now a person came and they slaughtered a korban chatat on Shabbat by accident, obviously, but he did it outside of the Azara, and it was 2 Avodah Zarah. So he's going to be Chayav 3 chataot. Number 1, Chilul Shabbat. Number 2, you slaughtered outside of the Bet HaMikdash, which is called Shechutei Chutz. And number 3, because of the Zarah. So says the Gemara, Matiken, what did you help? At the end of the day, you were already chayav because of Chilul Shabbat. Now, if right now Mikalkeh B'Chabura is going to be patur, so why are you going to be chayav? No. Yeah, okay. So he says, so Amar Rav Avira, says Rav Avira, Shemotzio midei ever minachai. He says, no, the reason why is because it's going to help us for ever minachai. Ever minachai means is that an eved, when you have a live animal and you take part of the live animal, that's called ever minachai, a limb from a living animal. You're not allowed to eat a limb from a living animal, and even a goy is not allowed to eat ever minachai. Okay, that means even a goy is not allowed to eat ever minachai.
Why is that, Rav?
It's
Why-
cruelty.
But why
It's
is
cruel.
cruelty if it happens every day, all days?
What do you mean it happens every day, all day?
All days, every day, the animals eat each other.
Well, that's why you're not allowed to eat those animals. Did you ever realize I was actually I was going over a Ilchot Kashrut, and there was an introduction to Ilchot Kashrut. And the introduction of Ilchot Kashrut is that you are what you eat, basically. Correct? That's what it is. So they said, do you realize that all the animals that eat their prey, you're not allowed to eat them? A lion, why can't you eat a lion? Lion is the king of the animals. Why can't you eat a lion? Because it preys on other animals. What are you allowed to eat? You're allowed to eat animals that eat grass. A cow eats grass. All these things. Any animal which is carnivorous, which means that it comes and it eats other animals, you're not allowed to eat them.
Because they have cruelty.
There's this cruelty,
And
and
it's
it brings in the
critical
cruelty inside of
Because
us.
that's why I say that you
And
eat
that's why
what you eat.
you are what you eat, because that's why it puts in midot inside of you. You understand? It's a powerful concept.
No.
So we could give an entire shiur just on this, but it's beautiful. It was a mamash. It was to do with the kashrut and why is it that we have to eat kosher, and it was going like in all the the Kabbalah and everything together. It was like everything together. It was very, very, very good. It was incredible because it shows you mamash like the deepness of what it is, the mitzvah, and why HaKadosh Baruch Hu does it. And people, they think, well, how could it be like? No. Yeah. 100%. Okay, fine. So now it says over here, shechato v'noda. What happens if you did shechita and then you found out that the owners, they didn't want to do it anymore, or that the owners died or they became tameh? So you're going to be patur. Why? Because you did it with permission. How are you going to find out that they died? How are you going to find out that they became tameh? So Amar Ravuna Marav says, Ravuna Marav, Asham shenitak l'riyah ushchato stam kasher leolah. When you have a korban asham, that the owners died or they had a kapara with another asham, right? So the din is that it has to be ro'eh ad shipol bo mum vipadeh, which means you have to let it graze until it gets a blemish, and then you redeem it. That's halacha. Vegam nitak l'riyah, which means that they took it and they put it in a special place in order to graze. If right now there's still no mum, and now they slaughtered it in the Bet HaMikdash stam, not for an asham, it's kosher as an olah. Why? Because since it was going to be brought as an olah anyway when it gets a mum, right? That means it has to be brought as a burnt offering, right? So therefore, the money goes to Kaitza Mizbeach, which means like this. What do you mean that you're redeeming it? Redeeming it means that you redeem it, but the money goes to Kaitza Mizbeach. Kaitza Mizbeach means that when the Mizbeach is Kaitz is like when a person has time off. It's summertime. Summertime is vacation. So when the Mizbeach was free from Korbanot, it wasn't nice that the Mizbeach was without any Korbanot at all. So they used to bring Korbanot Olot, burnt offerings. Because remember, only a burnt offering could be brought for no reason, right? You can't bring chatat, a sin offering, because what? You want to sin against Hashem. There's no sin. You're not allowed to bring a sin offering. You're not allowed to bring a sham, a guilt offering. It has to be an olah. So the ketz amizbeach was always korbanot olot. So whenever they had the mizbeach for a while without any korbanot, boom, bring an olah. And they used to bring it with the money that they had set aside for whenever they didn't have. Here's the korban olah. That's called kamitz mizbeach. So he says over here, they had this korban hasham. And this korban hasham, either the owners died or they got a kapara from another korban hasham. So what happens is that they bring this animal, right? And they brought this animal to the mizbeach and without realizing it. They didn't bring it as an hasham, they brought it as a lah, so it's kosher. Okay? So alma. So you see from here, kasavar lobaye akida. So you see from here, from the words of Ravuna in the name of Rav, that this hasham, since the money anyway was going to bring as an olah, you do not need akira. You do not need akira. That means bechavana that you're doing that. You're not doing it for that purpose. So says the Gemara, if so, kiloni taknami. Even if it wasn't going to be fixed that it's going to be there for grazing, it should be the same halacha. So says the Gemara, we make a decree after the kapara because of before the kapara, which means mina Torah, even beforehand, it's going to be kosher to bring as an olah. But the rabbi said that it's disqualified to bring as an olah, because even though they had a kapara with another animal, gizera, what happens if they did it before the kapara? And therefore they didn't want you to do that, right? Which means like this. Afterwards, for sure, you could bring it as an olah to the mizbeach, but even before you could. But we didn't want to do it beforehand because it's a gizera. That if before they had the kapara, they're going to bring it as an olah, and they're not supposed to. Before the kapara, they have to bring it as an hasham. It's only after the kapara that it's okay. But they made a gezerah before kapara and after kapara. That's why we say that you shouldn't do it. Umenat teimra. So how do you know that we say such a svara that we make a after kapara before because of gezerah before kapara? So says the Gemara, we learned it. Asham shemetu be'alav or shenitkapru be'alav. When you have an asham, a guilt offering, that the owners died or they were atoned. Ireh ad sheyistaev. So it says you're going to make a graze until it gets into a mum, until it gets a blemish. V'imached, you sell it. V'ipol damav l'ndavad. The money goes to a korban netava. Rabbi Eliezer says yamut. You have to let it die. Right? Why? He says we cause it to die. Rabbi Yoshua says no, sell it, yeah, and then you bring the money of azanullah. Pedamav, right, with the money of the nasham, yes, but itself, no. That means it itself, the animal itself, you cannot bring as a korban olah. Why? Which means that you see from here that he is making a decree after kapara because of before kapara. Which means even though after kapara it should be permitted mina Torah to bring it on the mizbeach as a korban olah, but since if you would have done it before kapara, it's a problem. So therefore we made a decree after kapara because of before kapara, you're not allowed to bring it at all. You have to sell it, and with that money you bring another korban olah, even though technically you could have used that in itself as a korban olah. Okay, you have to sell it, and then you bring another korban olah. So 8 Rav Chasta Rav Huna asked Rav Chasta to Rav Huna shechato v'noda shemashcho be'alim et yadam. What happens if you did shechita, but you already knew that the owners died or they became tameh or they didn't want to bring it anymore, right? So what happened? So he says over here that since at the time of the shechita you didn't know about it, you're going to be patur, right? But you did it with permission. Right? Ayin Gimel Amud Bet 73b. The Tani Allah. So we learned on it bechol during the week. Tekei gavna yisaref miyad. You're going to burn it immediately. So if you're going to tell me that you need akira, right, which means that you need to uproot it, right? Hay pesachu. This is a korban pesach. And since you do not have the owners, you have the psul in the goof. Amtu lehachi. So now what's going to happen is yisref miyad. You're going to burn it immediately. But if you're going to tell me that you do not need to say it mefurash, that it's not going to be like that, right? So mereisha shlamim. So already from the beginning, it's going to be considered a korban shlamim. So psulo mishumai. So why is it going to be pasul? Mishum davar acher, because of something else. Because you did a shechita after the tamid shel ben arbaim. If you remember, we learned a while back that korban pesach is done after the tamid shel ben arbaim. You remember? Because the korban pesach was done as late as possible, right? But technically speaking, any other type of a korban has to be done before the tamid shel ben arbaim. Aleha hashlem kol hakorbanot kulam. What does that mean? On the korban tamid shel ben arbaim, that's when you finish all the korbanot. But that's only to do the exception to the rule is going to be the korban pesach. So if you brought this korban pesach, but now you didn't bring it as a pesach, it was like a shlamim, then anyway it's going to be disqualified because you brought it after the korban and tamid shel ben arbaim. Makes sense. After, if you brought it, because again, you were supposed to bring it as a pesach. Pesach, you're allowed to bring it after the korban tamid shel ben arbaim. What did you do? You brought it as a shlamim. So anyway, it should be disqualified because you brought it after the tamid shel ben arbaim. So says the Gemara, ibud surah bay. You need, right, and to wait until the next day, until it becomes bad, and you don't burn it immediately. Meaning, even though it was going to become disqualified, you don't burn it immediately. You have to wait. You wait until it becomes rotten, and then it's like, for example, bread. You know, bread, you're not allowed to throw a bread when it's good bread. What do you have to do? You have to wait until it becomes rotten, and then you could throw it out. And even when you throw it out with kavod. You double bag it, right, and things like that, right? Or you could throw it to the fish, even things like that. But you're not supposed to disgrace bread. Bread is lechem, is something that we eat, something bal tashchit. You're not allowed to disgrace it. So same thing here. You have to wait until it gets rotten, then you burn it. The Tanya was learned in a braita. This is a general rule. If you have a psul in the goof of the body of the korban, you burn it immediately. But if the psul, the disqualification, is in the blood or in the owners, which means that, for example, the blood spilled on the floor, or the owners died, or they became tameh, or whatever it is, you have to wait until it becomes bad, and then you take it out to the bet sirpa to burn it. But you have to wait first until it becomes rotten, until it becomes bad, then you're allowed to burn it. Okay? So says the Gemara. So it comes out that when you have a Pesach, right, that's Sauna Kira Mifuresha for Shlamim. Not like Rav, because here you have to actually say it, because if not, there's going to be a difference in what happens. You're right. You can't just say that if you did slaughtering stam, it's still going to be kosher as an olah sacrifice. You have to say that if you did it as an olah, it's going to be kosher. Alma baya akira. So you see from here that you do need akira. Akira, if you remember one more time. Toeh means you made a mistake. Akira means you did it purposely. That you went and you uprooted it and you said, I'm going to do it for another sacrifice. That's called akira, that I'm uprooting something. Okay? Right? According to Rabbi Chia Bar Gamda, he comes and he says above in Daf Samachdalad Amud Aleph that the Chaburat Chachamim, they went and they all agreed, Ve'amri, and they said, right, that when you're going to slaughter a Korban Pesach during the rest of the year, you need akira mefureshet for a shlamim. And the Bnei Chabura went and they said on this, that for example, they were Tmemet, and therefore the owners were Tmemet. They were impurified because of a dead body, and therefore they had to be pushed off to this Pesach Sheni. The Pesach Sheni was for Tmemet. Hayu de Bayakira, right? This Korban, right, also needs Akira. So it's mashma that other things don't need Akira. Only this case needs Akira. So what are you going to say then? Michael Amema. But rather Rav Huna Yeshua says, what are we dealing with? You separated it before Chatzot on Erev Pesach. Yeah, umetu be'alim achar Chatzot. The owners died after Chatzot. Nid'eh means it's fitting. Nid'eh means it was pushed off. So by the beginning it was fitting. So when they separated the animal was fitting. Then it became disqualified. So but something that was fitting and it became disqualified cannot become fitting again. So that's it. So therefore that's called the dichui. It was pushed off. So therefore it's not going to be kosher even as a shlamim. So therefore it comes out that even if it still has a Shem Pesach and then they went and they slaughtered it, right, it's going to be burnt immediately, right, because it was a psul in the goof. Okay? So midu hutam Rav. So says the Gemara, but one second, this is only according to Rav. Hamar Rav alech. 1 second. If you're going to tell me that this is to answer up Rav himself says that there's no such thing as pushing off an animal. An animal is never pushed off because there's no dichui on an animal as long as the animal is alive. So therefore, according to this, the Pesach that the owners died after Chatzot, it's not dichui. So it's still kosher as a shlamim. You could still bring it as a peace offering. Elamar of Papa, but rather Rav Papa says, Hamani, who is this Rabbi Eliezer? It's Rabbi Eliezer. The Amar, but he says, V'chena shochet acherim. If somebody's going to shochet other types of korbanot as a korban pesach, it's going to be pasul. Because it's considered a psul in the body, which means that the psul is not only because you went and you slaughtered it, but rather it's a psul in the body as well. So if you're going to tell me it's also going to obligate because of the chatat. The halet Rabbi Eliezer toeh bidvar mitzvah patur, but he doesn't hold of this concept of toeh bidvar mitzvah is going to be patur, right? So he says, "Elatir gemar Rav Yosef pered Rav Salah Chasida kamed Rav Papa." But rather, Rav Yosef pered Rav Salah Chasida comes and he says it in front of Rav Papa. Amani, who is this? Yosef ben Chonai. It's Yosef ben Chonai. The Tanambas we learned in the Mishnah. Yosef ben Chonai says, "Anishchatim l'shem pes l'shem chatat psulim." If somebody is going to come and they're going to slaughter a korban for a Pesach or for a chatat psulim, right? Which means that they did the korban, another korban for a Pesach, which is pasul. Or you did a korban Pesach, which they already became pasul because of the owners, whatever, that they died. So it says, Alma psulo begufo. It is a psul beguf. And because of that, they said, you're going to burn it immediately. But now, even though Yosef ben Chonai comes and he holds like Rabbi Eliezer to do the shochet korban, another korban for the Pesach, to do the patur of toeh bidvar mitzvah, he holds like Rabbi Yeshua that you're going to be patur. You're not going to be chayav like Rabbi Eliezer. So
that's what Papa says.
Yes, this is what Papa just said now. This is the last answer, right, that we just said now. Okay? So now comes and he says, or he said it in front of Rav Papa. It was Rav Yosef that Rav Salah Chasida in front of Rav Papa. Okay? Now Rav Ashi comes and he's going to try to answer it another way. And he says like this, right? Rav really holds like Rabbi Shmuel ben the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Melukah. The time was we learned in the Braita, Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Melukah Omer, im yesh shahud bayom, if there's time during the day in order to check, if you have enough time during the day to check if the owners are still alive or they took off their hands from it, and that means they didn't want to use it anymore, or that they became tameh, then be'emet you are going to be chayav because you had enough time in the day to check it. So you have to wait until it becomes bad, and then you take it out for the bet serfat to burn it. So you don't burn it immediately. You take it out to the bet serfat tomorrow. My tama, what's the reasoning? Because you don't need akira. So says the Gemara, no. Nimai, how do you know this? Maybe he holds like Tana Bavua that he says afilu pigul nami baya ibutzura. According to the shita of Rabba Baravua, he says that even pigul, remember, pigul means that you did the sacrifice and you had any type of a sacrifice, doesn't matter what it is, and you had the intention of not eating it in the proper time. That's called pigul. Pigul hu lo yiretzeh. It's pigul. It's something disgusting. You're not allowed to use it whatsoever. Which one? Yeah, pigul is correct. Yes. So he says over here. So also according to the Shita of Rabbi Baravua, by pigul you also need ibut surah, which means you're also not going to burn it immediately. You have to wait until it gets rotten and then you burn it. Tiyalif avon avon minutar, but he's going to learn gzira shava avon avon from notar. It says by pigul va'nefesh ha'ochel mimena avonat yisa, you're going to carry its sin, and also by notar it's written va'ochelav avono yisa. So therefore, just like by the notar, it's only afterwards, which means it's not burnt immediately; it's only burnt later on. So too by pigul, it's not burnt immediately. If you're not going to say this, nitzmiu ba'alim, what are you going to say if they became tameh? Havadai ba'akira, for sure you need akira. We're talking about that it was already pushed off, so it's Pesach Sheni. But rather we push off this answer and we answer like we answered above, which was like Rav Yosef Ber Chanai, just like Rav Yosef Ber Chanai. So according to the Maskanat of the Gemara, it comes out that when it says Yisaref Miyad, it's only according to the Shita of Yosef Ben Chanai that if you're going to slaughter other korbanot for a Pesach, it's pasul. But according to this halacha, if somebody's going to slaughter other korbanot for a Pesach, it's going to be kasher. So if we're going to say this, so therefore it's going to come out that you need ibur tzura. You have to wait until it becomes rotten and then you burn it. You don't burn it immediately. Hadran alach elu devarim. And tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem, we start the new perek, Daf Ayin Daled Amud Aleph.